Welcome to another edition of the Inspired Stories podcast, where leaders share their experiences so we can learn from their successes and be inspired by how they've overcome adversity. My name is Anthony Codispoti, and today's guest is Nikoa Milton Gulstone. She is the co-founder and CEO of Level, a startup focused on building a racially diverse network of professional women working to tackle the racial wealth gap by investing in Black women. Under Nikoa's leadership, Level continues to expand its community, offering support and resources for women of color. Nikoa holds an MBA from Columbia Business School and a bachelor's degree from Howard University. She has shared her insights at Forte Foundation events, and her background in finance and real estate includes roles in major companies where she oversaw significant investments and managed complex portfolios. Through her commitment to racial equity, she has helped shape Level's vision to empower Black women entrepreneurs worldwide. She also collaborates with other leaders to advocate for inclusive economic advancement. She is recognized for her dedication in supporting Black women entrepreneurs and for her advocacy work in closing economic gaps. Now, before we get into all that good stuff, today's episode is brought to you by my company, Advac Benefits Agency, where we offer very specific and unique employee benefits that are both great for your team and fiscally optimized for your bottom line. Imagine being able to give your employees free access to doctors, therapists, and prescription medications in a way that puts more money in your staff's pockets and the company's too. As an example, one recent client with 450 employees boosted net profits over $412,000 per year. Results vary for each company, and some organizations may not be eligible. To find out if your company qualifies, contact us today at advacbenefits.com. All right, back to our guest today, co-founder and CEO of Level, Nikoa Milton Gulstone. Thanks for making the time to share your story today.
Oh, of course, Anthony. I wouldn't want to be anywhere else but here right now.
All right, let's get into it. So, Nikoa, before we get into how the idea to start Level came about and what it is that you're doing there, give us a little history about what you were doing leading up to this so we can kind of lay the groundwork for what your skill set is.
Oh, wow. I don't even know where to begin. I almost feel like I have to begin with my upbringing because I've gained so many skills just by growing up in the family that I grew up in. So I am originally from Toledo, Ohio, and my parents are blue collar workers. So I'm first generation college graduate. And from that family environment, my parents taught me like a very strong work ethic. They showed me how to be scrappy and to figure things out. And so from there, I went to Howard University, where I initially majored in chemistry because I thought I wanted to be a doctor. The only exposure I really had was, either be a doctor, a lawyer, or a teacher. My first semester as a chemistry major, I was like, ugh, not so much for me.
Not your thing.
I went over, not my thing.
Hey, we need to try on different hats to figure out which ones fit and which ones don't.
Seriously, and that's been like the through line of my life, really, which I think has lent itself to my entrepreneurial pursuits. But I went over to the School of Business. I knew that I was good at finance and accounting. I mean, my favorite project in school when I was in fifth grade was looking through the Sears catalog. We had a certain budget that we had. We had to like pay our bills and also buy presents for our families for Christmas. And I still remember that project to this day. So I went over to the School of Business and changed my major to finance. And from there, I landed in Chicago on an internship at LaSalle Bank. And another through line in my life is how Black women have supported me along the way. So a Black woman hired me to an internship at LaSalle Bank, and she mentored me while I was there when I was deciding whether or not I wanted to come back into either finance or capital markets. She pushed me to capital markets because she said, there are not a lot of Black women in capital markets. There are not a lot of us who do that, and you will develop a really deep skill set if you go that route.
She wanted you to be a trailblazer.
She did, and I listened to her, and that's what I did. So I landed on the debt syndicate desk, where I learned how to underwrite corporate bond deals for major corporations. And in 2008, I graduated from undergrad in '05. 2008, housing market crash, big financial crisis. Those of us who were in finance were, really at a point where there was no certainty. So I learned very early on in my career, 3 years in, that there really is no more certainty in a stable job than there is in entrepreneurship. I watched my mentors be fired with no notice, and we just kind of had to figure it out. I was able to stay because I was young and like cheap labor in a sense. So through that process, I learned very quickly how to pivot. So my mentors actually guided me towards investment consulting. So I went into investment consulting, but my focus was in fixed income because that's where I had come from.
So you were able to kind of leave on your own terms as you found another opportunity.
I was.
Yeah, in 2008, 2009, not everybody had that luxury. Like you said, a lot of your mentors, a lot of the folks that you were reporting to, they were asked to leave. But you were kind of able to guide your own transition there.
I was, and I was lucky in that front, and I was. What I will say is that I was able to form relationships that were able to help me pivot into an industry that I knew nothing about. So as I mentioned, I'm first generation. So everything that I learned about finance and learned about entrepreneurship, I've learned just by kind of jumping in and having mentors along the way. So I pivoted to investment consulting, was still in fixed income, but wanted to figure out how to get onto the real estate side of things. And couldn't really figure it out. I had interviews with folks and everyone told me that I needed to go back to business school, or if I wanted to pivot to something else in finance, I would need to get my CFA. So I decided to go to business school because I thought that the network would provide opportunities that a CFA could not. A CFA designation is very limited in terms of like, if you want to pivot to do something else outside of finance. So I decided to go to Columbia to get my MBA. And after my MBA, I went to work for a real estate private equity firm. So I was able to make the transition to real estate.
So interesting that you were choosing to go into real estate at a time or shortly after a time where the bottom fell out of that market. What was drawing you to that?
So I started business school in 2012. So I saw the bottom fall out, and I saw that people were coming in and buying up all of these distressed assets. I also, when I was a little girl, my mom used to take me to the parade of homes. I don't know if that's a Midwest thing, but after church on Sundays, we would go to the parade of homes where we would look at real estate that we were never going to buy. But I developed an interest in real estate really young, but never knew how to like make money off of it. But then I saw the opportunity in investment consulting, wanted to transition to real estate, and it just so happened to be at a time where the bottom had fallen out. There was so much opportunity. And I myself had bought up a condo in 2006 and was personally impacted because the value of my property tanked. So went to business school, met my co-founder at Level in business school, and we'll get back to that. But I transitioned to real estate at a private equity firm in Chicago. And this was another time where this is a Black woman who I had worked with at a previous job. I was having trouble finding a job in real estate because of nepotism, because of, real estate is a very white male dominated field, and that's who they typically hire. I didn't have a background in real estate, but I had a background in finance. It was just really difficult for me to find employment after graduating from Columbia Business School. So
where did you land?
So my friend Lynette, who was working for a small private equity real estate shop, I was talking to her about like what I was experiencing, and she was like, okay, I'm going to talk to the owner. So I landed at Newport Capital Partners in Chicago.
Okay.
Because Lynette, another Black woman, connected me and pulled me in essentially. So that is where
it's sort of this theme, like a recurring theme of mentors, of folks that were looking out for you, kind of helping you get connected and into the right seat so that you could then prove yourself. Yeah.
Absolutely. And in that role, because we were a shop of only 9 people, including like our receptionist, I was underwriting deals. So Newport Capital Partners is a boutique firm that invests in grocery anchored shopping centers across the Midwest. So we were based in Chicago. We were 9 people. So I was doing the underwriting. I was doing asset management, property management, acquisitions, dispositions. I was doing the portfolio management. So doing all of the numbers behind the scenes. So I did it all because I was the person with, the knowledge, or at least the all the pieces that could come together to support the acquisitions guy and the accounting folks and the property manager. So I cut my teeth there, and then I transitioned to Welltower in Toledo, Ohio. So the story behind that is my husband and I, or my ex-husband and I, had 2 children at this point in Chicago. All of our support was in Ohio because
where you were from
Toledo. Mm-hmm. I never planned to move back to Toledo. And I said, there's only one place that I can work. And if I get a job there, I will move back. Just so happened to be that the CEO and then CFO were both Columbia Business School alum. And I knew that nobody wants to move back to Toledo, who's had all of this like life experience. And I knew that I could connect with them in that way and prove to be an asset to them. And I had also, it's so funny, and I forget about this. When I was in business school, the summer between first and second year, I couldn't find an internship in real estate because I didn't have experience. I didn't know anyone. So I took the one internship that offered me something in Houston. It was CBRE and their seniors housing group. So Welltower is a seniors housing REIT. So I was able to connect the dot from the only internship that I was able to get this job in Toledo and really be able to sell myself in that way. So I went there.
Isn't that interesting how you can kind of look in the rearview mirror and be like, man, those dots really connected?
And it was in a point in my life where I was like stressed because of like the lack of opportunity, but the opportunity that I was able to like create ended up being a catalyst for my future, which is really interesting and not something that I've ever thought about.
So how did the idea to start Level come about? You mentioned that you met your co-founder back at Columbia Business School. Was this an idea that had been percolating over the years, or was there sort of like a light bulb moment where the idea came about?
So this is another, the dots connected. So my co-founder, Jenny, we were in the same cluster. So we got to know each other very quickly at CBS. And in full transparency, prior to business school, I did not have, I had maybe 1 or 2 non-Black girlfriends. It was hard for me to connect deeply with women who were not Black. But Jenny and I were able to do that because she grew up in a household where her parents really, and I should mention that she's a white woman who grew up in the Upper West Side of New York. So we have very different backgrounds, very different family histories. But her parents really instilled in her the value of diversity, and not just by like telling her, but by exposing her to diverse experiences. Like they're close family friends. And when I say friends, like close family friends are Black. So we were able to have conversations that I had not been able to have with other non-Black women. So the idea was not percolating, but the connections were being made, starting in 2012. So fast forward to 2019, we both were either recently back or going back to work after maternity leave. So she has 3 boys, I have 4 boys. And she had been going to these events in New York City that were being put on by these women's networking groups that said they cared about diversity, but had a really hard time attracting and retaining women of color. So because Jenny and I had a friendship that we maintained post business school, she called me up and she's like, Nicole, what do you think about starting a company that's really diverse, like from the ground up, where we bring women together to network? I was like, I work in like commercial real estate. I work in finance. Like, I'm just not interested in that. Like, my group chats are like my Black girlfriends so that I can download on like all of the things that I don't feel comfortable, doing in settings that don't feel safe for me. But I said, what I am interested in is starting a company for women like me, women who are smart and resourceful and scrappy, and Black, but don't come from wealth, so can't just like up and quit their jobs to pursue their entrepreneurial dreams. So, Jenny, and this idea, Jenny has like an annual Christmas party. So we were talking about it at the Christmas party. I flew up, and because I lived in Ohio at the time, we were talking about it. And then in February, she came down to Ohio, and we like whiteboarded like what this could look like. So what Level is a marriage of our two ideas. So it is a network of professional women who come together for the purpose of investing in Black women. And we are intentionally made up of 50% Black women and 50% non-Black women. And we take the women through a 10-week experience where they're in a cohort of 10 folks who are led by women who have already gone through the experience. And we really get to know each other because we think that the foundation of creating any change is going to come, you need to have empathy. And if you don't know each other, it's hard for you to have empathy. Well, it shouldn't be, but it's easier to have more empathy when you actually know someone's story. So we get to know each other. We talk about like, how do you have these hard conversations about race and the racial wealth gap across race, because it's uncomfortable. And we do that, and we teach the women, or refresh the women's knowledge on the history of the racial wealth gap, because we think it's really important for everyone to have a baseline understanding of why the work we're doing is so urgent and so important. And we need them to understand, how we got here. And then we teach the women how to become angel investors. And one thing that we're also doing is trying to make investing in private markets more accessible. So we don't require that women be accredited investors.
Yeah, I kind of want to, let's put a pin in this and kind of come back. Okay. And I'm sorry to kind of jump in sort of the middle of the story here, but I want to rewind a little bit and better understand, because, your own comment, you said, hey, in full transparency, I had not had friendships with, non-Black people before. And I'm curious, was it the environment that you grew up, you just like, there wasn't the opportunity, you weren't interacting with people who weren't Black, or the opportunity was there, but you didn't feel safe, or it just felt more comfortable to be over here? Because I want to understand that first, and then understand a little bit more about how, the transition to being more comfortable around Jenny and other white folks kind of came about. And you mentioned a little bit about that, because, it's like, hey, Jenny, she had a great background of, growing up with a lot of diversity, around her. And so that seeing that kind of made you comfortable. But I kind of want to understand a little bit more about your background, Nikoa.
Sure. So there were 7, I went to an all-girls Catholic high school. There were 7 Black girls in my class. I think there were 187 girls, but we all sat at one table, and all the Black girls sat together in the lunchroom. And I'm sure people can resonate with that. Like, if you think back to your high school days, or even your, even like if you're at work, Black people kind of, you notice that we congregate, because that's where we feel safe. That's where we feel like we can be ourselves. Going to work in corporate America, I could never show up as my authentic self. I could never wear my hair like this, or big hoop earrings. I'm always conscious of, if I say this, what are they going to think? How are they perceiving me? Not because of what I am saying, but because of what I look like. And that, I think, is a story that many Black people in this country have. And I always say, like, if
You
you
feel
look
like
at
somebody who looked differently could say some of the things that you are thinking, but don't want to say,
and not have
a negative reaction.
exactly,
Okay.
exactly, exactly, because you know, women, specifically Black women, we get the angry Black woman title. Like, no, I'm just pushing back.
I'm just a person who sometimes gets angry like everybody else.
Or I'm not even angry. I'm just pushing back, and you're perceiving that to be combative, but I'm just asking a question. And if it were a white man asking you this question, you would not have the same response. So it's all of that. Yeah, and in corporate marriage. So, and I think that's why it's so necessary to have these affinity groups in these companies, because it offers a space for folks who are not, cisgender white men to have a place where they can feel like their voices and are heard and their experiences matter.
So, yeah, like you said, you grew up, you went to an all girls Catholic school. There were 7 Black girls in the class. You hung out together because you felt safe. You felt like you could be yourself. That was where you felt most comfortable and relaxed. And then come Columbia Business School, you meet Jenny, who is a very different background. She's white. Did it take a while for her to kind of win you over or soften you up, or no, you guys kind of clicked pretty fast?
We clicked in orientation, and this is like before class even started. And the story behind that is that Jenny would always show up late. And if you showed up late, you had to get in front of the class and like do a dance. And Jenny lived down the street. I lived all the way in Riverdale in the Bronx. So I asked her one day, I'm like, girl, like, why are you always late? Like, do you live really far? And she was like, I'm so embarrassed. Like, no, I live down the street. But like, that's something that I could never do. Like, I'd be so embarrassed as like a Black woman, because the stereotype is that we're always late. And then I could never be in the front of the class, like being the Black girl who's like dancing. So we talked about that and talked about it openly. So she was really a fast friend very early on.
Okay. So let's get back to kind of where we were in the story. So she had one idea, you kind of had a different idea, you sort of married them together. And so I think where I kind of cut you off was we were talking about, how you want to teach people to become angel investors. Yeah?
Sure. I mean, so we do look at, revenue, we look at expenses, and we look at like the traditional finance, like metrics, but we don't necessarily make that be the end all be all. We understand that the ways that traditional VCs and traditional angel investing has been set up has not worked for Black women entrepreneurs. We understand that not all companies are VC scale, but they can be on track to be profitable or may already be profitable. So we take a creative approach to how we invest in these women and how we evaluate them. We also want to empower the women who are coming into our women's equity circles to decide how they want to invest their money and what is important to them to look for. So is it, a company going and scaling at 10x, or is it a mom and pop shop who employs, 50 Black people in the community and is profitable, but just needs like a working capital loan? So we take a completely different approach, and it's worked well for us. We've done this at this point. We're on our 19th cycle, and we've had acquisitions happen. We've had loans pay back early. So, we're proving that the traditional models don't necessarily work for us, but that doesn't mean that we can't make money.
Sorry, Nikoa, when you say that you're on your 19th cycle, is that like your 19th fund? Like, what does a cycle mean?
So each women's equity circle is made up of 10 to 12 women, and each of those circles invest in one entrepreneur. So we're in the process of making our 19th investment. We've made 18 to date.
Great. Okay. And so it may not check the boxes for a traditional VC private equity or, angel investor, but these are models that you've already proven out can still be profitable for the investors and still really helpful as a leverage point for the companies that they're investing in.
Absolutely. And that's not to say that we have not invested in VC scale companies, because we've done that too. But that's not the only companies that we target.
And so is this mostly just like making an investment and, they're kind of using your capital in judicious ways that they determine, or do you get involved with any kind of operational support?
So it's making the investment, and I'll say that we're not a fund. So the women in who are community members of Level, they invest through third parties like WeFunder, or we facilitate the loans through a platform called Pigeon Loans. So they make those individual investments, and we also, because the women are across industries, so the women who make up the circles could be doctors, lawyers, they could be in VC themselves. We have educators. We try to provide a very wide range of expertise, so that when we provide the support to the entrepreneurs, not just financial investment, but we also provide pro bono services for them. We want to make sure that we have a diverse skill set. So we stick with them for about 9 months and work on any project that they just might need an extra set of hands for.
Okay, here we are on day 2, part 3 of our recordings, because we've been hammered with some technical issues, mostly some internet connection things. So we're going to pick back up where we left off yesterday, which was, Nikoa, you were explaining how you use a couple of different platforms for investors to get money to the companies. And you specifically use these platforms because it allows people who are not accredited investors to participate. And one of the platforms you were starting to explain to us is something called Pigeon Loans. And how did this come about?
So this came about because we were interested in facilitating loans for companies that weren't interested in raising VC capital, but just needed maybe some working capital to buy more inventory. So we were looking for a platform that would do the legal work for us. So they draft the promissory notes. The lender can go on and set up the loan between themselves and the entrepreneur, and it takes Level out of that process. We've worked with other crowd equity platforms as well, because they allow for non-accredited investors to be on their platform. So we've, consistently looked for creative ways to solve for the access to capital for Black founders and the challenge of the expense of setting up, special purpose vehicles and all the legal work that goes behind that. Lawyers are very expensive. So these platforms take that burden off of the entrepreneurs, and it takes the burden off of us, and it allows us to focus on what we really do well.
Okay, so with the funds going directly from the investors to the companies, and Level kind of being like a relationship manager here, and providing a lot of training to folks who want to kind of get their feet wet in all of this. What's the revenue model for Level? How do you guys make money?
So we make money by folks coming and joining our courses. So we charge a fee to participate in the circles, and we've expanded our curriculum. So now we don't just offer the Women's Equity Circle that focuses on entrepreneurship, but we also offer a circle that focuses on policy. So instead of learning about how to become an angel investor, we're learning how policy is written and how different policymakers impact our local elections and our national elections. So instead of bringing in entrepreneurs, we bring in Black women who are running for office. And then we decide which woman we're going to support her campaign. And we charge for that course. Our third course offering is a real estate course. So my background, again, is in commercial real estate and finance. And there are a couple of other level members who have similar backgrounds that I actually worked with in commercial real estate. And we've come together to build a course that discusses the history of land theft and gentrification and redlining in this country. But at the end of the course, after we teach them how to become commercial real estate investors, we form an LLC and then purchase the piece of property. So those courses we charge for. We also host live events. Our next one is actually in Chicago. And we charge for those events where we bring level members, entrepreneurs, potential level members, and other folks in the community to come out. It's a dinner party series. So we have dinner, we have drinks, and we come together to work on solving a solution or solving a problem. So that is essentially our revenue model. And we don't have a ton of overhead. We have a really lean team and we all work remotely. So we don't have to pay for real estate and whatnot. So,
and you're not collecting like a management fee for the funds that are being invested.
We are not collecting a management fee. No,
yeah,
we're not a fund. So
right, you're kind of bypassing that model.
Yeah.
So you've mentioned obviously your business partner is not Black, but are all of your members Black?
No.
Okay.
No, so we are very intentional about being made up of 50% Black women and 50% non-Black women, because we think that it's going to take our collective effort to close the racial wealth gap. And we think that the relationships that we build across race is really going to be what is the driver for the change that we're all looking for, because we think that the conversations that we have at Level, our Black members and non-Black members can take them back to their workspaces. They can take them back to their communities and start having open dialogue about things that impact all of us, but we're like scared to talk about. So no, we are very intentional about not being just Black.
And so if someone were interested in the courses, sort of joining, becoming part of what you're doing, how do they get more information?
So our application is on our website, levelleaders.com. You can find us on Instagram at Let's Level, LETS Level. My LinkedIn is Nikoa Milton Gulstone, where I have a lot of information about what's going on at Level. We also have a LinkedIn page. And then when you go to our LinkedIn page and you click on employees, they're not actually employees, but they're Level members. So you get an opportunity to see the women who are a part of the community.
And so how do you spread the word? How do people find you? What's kind of been the most effective method to date anyways for how you've been growing the community?
So we have done no PR. We've done no marketing. The most effective way that we have grown this community has been word of mouth. Our members tell their friends about us. The entrepreneurs who come and pitch, they tell their entrepreneur friends about us. Entrepreneurs who have gotten funding or may not have gotten funding, then come and join the community to support other entrepreneurs. It's been 100% word of mouth from the women in our community, because they feel so deeply about the work that we're doing and they've had such a good experience that they refer their friends. We'd like to change that. So we are working on B2B partnerships. And we think that if we gain these partnerships, then it'll be much easier for us to grow at scale versus the word of mouth.
What do you think one of those B2B partnerships looks like? What kind of a business would you target?
So we have had partnerships with large tech companies, with large financial services firms who could benefit from their workforce having had these conversations, because what happens is it's a training for how to have really difficult conversations across teams. It's something that could be beneficial to any organization, because a lot of times we leave our full selves out of work. But if we could bring our full selves to work, the workplace could extract more value. And by extract more value, I mean, that sounds predatory, but we'd be more open to giving more value if we felt like we could have these conversations across teams. And because we're having these really difficult conversations, it helps for these women who go back into these corporations to have difficult conversations. Maybe not about this, but it gives them practice to have conversations across difference. And that is something that any company could benefit from.
Now, you mentioned earlier, Nikoa, that you offer pro bono services to the companies that get invested in, at least for the first several months. What does that look like?
So the women in the circles are made up of 10 or 12 women across industry who are interested in doing the work that we're doing. And we meet with the entrepreneur during our 10-week sessions to do a deep dive into her business to understand like what her needs are outside of the financial needs. And these women who are fully capable of doing lots of things really rally around this entrepreneur and put their heads together to help her come up with solutions for how to move her business forward. And those conversations and those projects have looked different depending on what the business is. Sometimes it's just they want to have connections with other funders. So we make sure that we connect them with other people who are interested in investing in companies like them. We've done research projects. There was one woman an entrepreneur who was looking to do some rebranding. So we did a focus group. We had a researcher in our circle. So we did a focus group to help her with the rebranding. Other entrepreneurs have wanted help with refining their pitch so that they can go and source other capital. So we do a myriad of things, and it looks different, depending on who the entrepreneur is and what help that they need. But we have been able to use our resources and our networks to help the entrepreneurs and meet them where they are.
What's the biggest area of need that you see typically?
I mean, outside of capital?
Yeah, outside of the obvious of, they've come to you because they need cash. Are they still trying to prove the minimum viable product? Is it just all about sales? Hey, we need more customers. It's
about the relationships. Honestly, it's about having them be in the right room to get the right help that they need. And it's something that Level thinks a lot about in terms of relationship building, because we know that the flow of capital, it's all based on who you know. It's based on your network. So a lot of our entrepreneurs need just those doors to be open because they have, a lot of them are, producing revenue. They have the patents, they have, the team, but they just need more doors to be open so that they can access more capital, so that if they need, one of our companies is a medical device company, and she needs more creative ways to raise capital, but she doesn't know the right people to talk to. So they come to us and we reach out to our network to connect them with the people that they need to know to move their business.
Nikoa, when you speak at events like Forte Foundation, which focuses on women in business, what's the message that you're delivering that you think really resonates the most with these current entrepreneurs or aspiring entrepreneurs?
So a lot of entrepreneurs feel like if they share their ideas, someone's going to take it and do something with it and steal their idea. And I constantly say that you are the secret sauce. You are the special sauce. Even if you share your idea, no one is going to put it out in the market like you would. And you need to hone in on that and dig deep and believe in that and believe in yourself and know that, you can't get the help that you need if you don't share your ideas. And if you do share your ideas, just know that no one else can execute it in the way that you can.
Yeah, it's interesting that you bring that one up in particular, because this is something that as an entrepreneur, I've wrestled with myself over the years, developed a number of products, have some patents to my name. And, I would always want to protect myself before I went out and had those conversations, at least file a provisional patent, which is very inexpensive. You can often do, without an attorney or an expert. That just kind of gives, a little placeholder to say that, hey, this is protected for the next 12 months. But, the older that I've gotten, I've kind of come a little bit more towards, the advice that you're providing, because I realize that just an idea, not to discredit an idea, but they're a dime a dozen. It's the execution that really matters. And there aren't a lot of people who will stick with a new idea to bring it to fruition, because you run into so many hurdles, so many challenges, the great unknowns. You don't know what you don't know when you're starting something new. And so, I'm a little bit more towards the other end now, like you're talking about. I would say open up. You're going to get more help than you are risk of something happening to you.
Absolutely. I mean, entrepreneurship is hard. It's hard. And I couldn't imagine like taking someone else's idea and trying to like figure it out. It's hard enough to figure out how to execute your own ideas. So I always encourage folks to just go for it, and ask for help.
No. Let's see. I want to shift gears now. I want to talk about a serious challenge that you've overcome, Nikoa. And you might choose something personal. You might choose something professional. How'd you get through it? What did you learn?
Oh boy. I've had so many challenges just in the past 5 years since I've launched Level. And I guess I'll just go back to, how we decided to launch Level when we did. And, think back to March 2020. That was like the start of COVID. We were intending to launch in person. I don't really know how we were going to do that because I lived in Ohio and Jenny lived in Brooklyn. But we were going to launch in person, and then COVID happened. And it was when I was in the midst of a lot of chaos with my then employer. My father was the first confirmed COVID case at the hospital that he was in. And Jenny came to me and she's like, we can just wait. We can just pause to see, like, what happens with your dad. And I was like, no, like, let's move forward. We are going to move forward and do this thing because that is what he would want me to do. During that period, I was working from home. I had 3 children. My youngest was maybe 4 or 5 months. I had decided to quarantine with my ex-husband and start to build this business.
Was he your ex-husband at the time?
Huh?
Was he your ex-husband at the time?
Yes.
Oh boy.
Yes.
This is a tornado. You've got a 4-month-old. Your dad is one of the early COVID cases in all of this. You want to launch this business. You're sheltering in place with your ex-husband. Wow.
With my ex-husband. And so we didn't really know much about COVID at the time. And this is another testament to relationships, because my best friend that I've known since 7th grade she's an ICU nurse who was treating COVID patients at the time. So she was on calls with my dad's care team twice a day. So every shift, she would report back to me. I'll report to my family. And while I'm building Level, we were in our pilot phase. So our second circle was made up of 7 women, one of which who is from the same town that I'm from. And her dad happened to sit on the board at the hospital that my dad was in. So I was experiencing all these things. They had called us in to say goodbye. And I was like, no, because Ashley has called twice a day. Like, I know what his care is supposed to look. I know that he's improving. And I called the woman who was in Level, whose dad was on the board. And I said, this is like, he's not receiving the best care. Like, I know that they're calling us to say goodbye because it's day 21. So she called her dad and he made a call to the rest of the board. My dad's care turned around, and we were in a session actually with that particular circle when I got notice that he was being released from the hospital. And it's been on the news. So he was like on a ventilator for 21 days. He had to go to rehab for a couple of months. Like, my uncle, his brother, died during that time of COVID, and we had to like share that with him while we were standing outside of it. Like, so And in the midst of all of that level, I was like, it has to move forward. It has to move forward, because what else am I going to do? Sit in the house and like just worry and be sad? No, I need to continue with the idea that we have, because it's very purpose driven. And this will be the fuel that I use to keep going. And these relationships have gotten me to this point where I can call people up that I didn't know before. They can make a call to someone higher up, and they literally saved my dad's life.
What kind of care was he not getting that they were then able to switch and help with?
So they were lying to us about his care. They were saying that his kidney function wasn't what we knew that it was. They were saying that his oxygen levels were lower than they actually were. And I think that at that time, the doctors didn't really know. And he was the first COVID patient. So they were like, at 21 days, we can't do anything else.
Because that was the belief, like
right.
21 days and like,
and that's it. And
a switch flips and you're done.
No, this is not. And I don't know if other patients got that care, but I know that I was not going to take no for an answer when I had been super involved in knowing about his stats. And his doctors were just lying to us. They were just lying to us. So that,
like, knowingly lying, or just they were not informed, and they were
knowingly lying. Like his creatinine levels, his oxygen level, like we knew them because my friend was calling the nurses every shift change. So we had a log of what was going on. We had a log of where his levels were. And when they called us to say goodbye, they told us that his levels were much different than they actually were.
Why would they do that?
Well,
did I just pick at a really big scab here?
At a higher rate in childbirth than white women do.
Why? Tell me. I want to hear it.
We're not taken seriously. We're considered disposable, and we're discarded. We have to advocate for ourselves 1,000,000 times more than any other population. Well, maybe not any other population, but than white people in this country. And I firmly believe that the only reason why my uncle died is because he didn't have an advocate like my father did.
That's heartbreaking.
My cousins and my aunts saw tears rolling down his face when they said that they were going to take him off of the ventilator. He knew what was going on. And he died because he didn't have the advocates that my father did.
Where did you go for strength during this time? A lot of times when I hear stories where, people are just dealing with multiple tornadoes at a time, it's a spouse, it's a loved one. But here we are in the midst of COVID, and you're with your ex-husband. And I have to imagine that the dynamic there is not, tell me if I'm wrong, but not one of sort of love and support. Like, what did you do?
So I went within, for sure. And I also have an incredible village of girlfriends who have helped me through every stage of my life. When pre-COVID, when I was, going through the separation and I had moved and I was trying to figure out how to take care of all these kids, my girlfriend moved her life, uprooted her life, came from Nashville, Tennessee, and lived with me for 6 months. I didn't have any furniture. I didn't know what I was going to do with these kids. She came and lived with me for 6 months to help me figure it out. So I've always had a group of girlfriends who have done life with me through the good, the bad, the ugly, and they 9.9 times out of 10 have been Black women.
That's your inner circle. Yeah, their circle of strength.
Mm-hmm.
So let me now turn this around, Nikoa, and ask, what's your superpower?
Ooh, no one's ever asked me that before. What is my superpower? So I feel like I've just tapped into it. But for whatever reason, people feel really comfortable being really comfortable with me. Maybe it's my vulnerability. Like I just am who I am, and that makes other people feel really comfortable. That's part of my leadership style. I allow people to be who they are without judgment. And I think people really gravitate towards that because it is pretty rare.
A lot of our listeners are, they're tuning in. They want some advice, some guidance, some insights into maybe what has helped you. Is there a particular book, a podcast, a course, something that has helped you either personally or professionally that others might benefit from?
I don't think that it's like one particular thing. I'm not big on like self-help books or like industry books. I'm really big on accountability, and like I wake up every morning and I do a brain dump. So I struggle with depression, anxiety, and ADHD. So when I wake up, like my mind is racing. So I do a brain dump. I write everything down, and then that gives me like a breath of fresh air. Like, okay, like I've written it down, then I can figure out like what to do with it later. And that's helped me a lot with my anxiety. I do try to stay like in a certain routine. So when I wake up and after I do my brain dump, I'll listen to The Daily and Up First. Those podcasts are favorites of mine. And then I have coffee and then I get to work. So I think routine has definitely helped me, and that looks different for everyone. Like I'm not an early riser, so I don't get to work until 10 a.m. But I think leaning into your strengths, even if other folks have told you that they're not your strengths, like just lean into that. And that has been really, really helpful for me.
Are there specific things that you've tried which have helped you kind of manage the depression, the anxiety, the ADHD?
A to-do list, a written to-do list. So I have to like write things down. I can't do the online, the notes. I can't do that. I have to write it down. Therapy, medication, and also going to the gym. So I, have 4 kids, married, like I'm running 2 businesses. I'm responsible for a lot of things, but the gym is 1 hour that I get to myself where no one can reach me because my phone is in the locker and I don't have to think about anyone else. And I'm also releasing endorphins. So that really has helped me as well.
I think you hit on some really great ones there. I love that you gave voice to the therapy, to the medication, which is really important and helpful for so many people. The physical activity, critical for everybody. I don't care what state you're in. And the fact that you're creating these to-do lists. Are you traditionally creating them in the morning? Is that part of the brain dump that you were talking about?
I wish I had my to-do list handy. But no,
I think anytime you can get it out of your head, that there's something really
out of my
helpful
head,
in that.
And then I categorize it later. I just need to get it out of my head, and then I'll find time to like figure out what to do with it later. And I use a tool called Dashboard. It's an amazing to-do list organizer that keeps me on track, and it's been the one thing that has helped me keep things compartmentalized and also like work through my to-do list in a way that doesn't feel so overwhelming.
So you write it down first and then you transfer it into this application?
It's not an application. So I write it down just like as a list.
Okay.
And then I categorize it later on my written dashboard. So dashboard is like a written, it's a physical.
Old school. I love it.
Old school. Old school.
That way, if the electricity or the internet goes down, like we had yesterday, like you can still operate.
Accomplish to-do list, but I still know what's on here.
So, Nikoa, as you look back, what's the best decision you've ever made for your business?
Ooh, for my business. hiring my director of community operations. She was our first hire. She's incredible. She's adaptable. She's been able to and I think that's important too in entrepreneurship, because you can't necessarily afford to hire the entire C-suite, but you need someone in there that can do a lot of things. And Ishelle has been that for us, and she's been able to do so many things and go with us through all of the changes in the organization. And I don't think we would still be here if we're not for hiring her. So we made a really good decision at hiring. I mean, I know a lot of entrepreneurs, their first hires do not work out. Ishelle is going to go with me everywhere I go. Jeez.
You're joined at the hips now.
Yes.
There's no separation here.
Yeah.
This next question I think is a fun one to sort of think about, because as we're going through our lives, our careers, and a lot of times we make mistakes, we trip up. But then when we fast forward a few years, we kind of look back in the rearview mirror. Sometimes the thing that at the moment seemed like a big mistake, we can now look back at with a lot of gratitude because it actually helped to propel us forward in some way. Can you think of something like that where it really felt like a huge debilitating mistake at the time, but now you're like, oh, so glad that happened?
A huge debilitating mistake. I don't.
And maybe it's not as dramatic as that. Maybe it was a smaller mistake, but something that you were kind of beating yourself up for at the time. And now you look back and you're like, you know what? That taught me this, which led to that. And I'm so grateful it happened.
Well, so early on, we were trying to do a lot. We were doing this curriculum. We had a book club. We were doing just a lot of stuff, and it was great because that's what the community needed during COVID. But then post-COVID, we kept trying to do that where folks were more interested in getting together in person because we had been, on lockdown for so long. So while it seemed to be great at the time, we learned that, okay, we're spending a lot of effort doing things that our members no longer value. And I think we did that for too long. And once we had the epiphany, we were able to pivot and offer them more in-person events and more things that they did value now that we're outside of COVID. And it ended up being an additional revenue stream for us, which has been great. And it's not only an additional revenue stream, but also a different way to recruit new members. So it's turned out to be a blessing in disguise. I wish that it had not taken us as long to get to that point. But, my co-founder and myself, this is the first time we started a business. So, we learn as we grow and as we go. And we've had several hiccups, and I don't know if that's our greatest one, but in entrepreneurship, that's just, you don't know what you don't know. You do the best you can, and hopefully you move on sooner rather than later.
Where do you want to take Level here? You and Jenny, where do you want to take it the next few years?
So I'm really excited about these new offerings that we have. I'd like our members to own real estate and to be backing candidates who are interested in supporting the initiatives that are important to our community members. And I'd love for more entrepreneurs to be funded and also increase the pipeline that, we have entrepreneurs that come to us. I'd love to introduce them to more funding and more resources. And it's hard for me to quantify what I want Level to be in the future. But I want to do more of what we're currently doing and at a larger scale.
Let's see, Nikoa, I think I've just got one more question for you, but before I ask it, I want to do two things. First of all, everyone listening, go ahead and hit the subscribe button on your favorite podcast app. We've had a great conversation here over the last 2 days with Nikoa, and I want you to get more great content like this. Nikoa, can you let people know how to get in touch with you or continue to follow your story?
Yes. You can please reach out on LinkedIn. I am very interested. in knowing folks who are interested in the work that I'm doing. So don't be surprised if you reach out and then I follow up with like an email wanting to connect with you. So that's Nikoa Milton Gulstone on LinkedIn. We are at Let's Level on Instagram, Level Leaders on Instagram or on LinkedIn, I'm sorry. And our website is levelleaders.com.
And we'll include links to all those in the show notes for folks. But last question for you, Nikoa. You and I, we reconnect in a year and you're super excited. You're celebrating something. What's that thing that you're celebrating?
We're celebrating multiple assets in our real estate portfolio. We're celebrating building our team. We're celebrating supporting. So we've run 19 cycles. So we've invested in 19 Black women-owned businesses. I'd like to double that in the next year.
Wow.
And I'd like to get folks more involved in the local level politics. And we're bipartisan for sure, but we want folks to be involved in policy because we know that closing the racial wealth gap isn't just about the money, but it's about policy as well.
Nikoa Milton Gulstone from Level. I'm going to be the first to thank you for sharing both your time and your story with us today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me, Anthony. It's been a wild ride with these technical difficulties, but
hey, and just like any entrepreneur, we persevered, we pushed through it, and we made it work.
Perfect.
Folks,
I appreciate it.
Absolutely, folks. That's a wrap on another episode of the Inspired Stories podcast. Thanks for learning with us today.